Sarashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmaracharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Good. Be seated, please. Good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Very good. Welcome back, and welcome to our many students attending this class online. We continue in our study of this chapter 8 of Uddhava Gita, and we just saw in the last class, finally we learned why this is also called Hansa Gita, because Sri Krishna now, in the form of a Hamsa, in the form of a swan, is giving spiritual instruction to Brahmaji, and I'll wait for everyone to be seated. Sri Krishna is now giving instruction to Brahmaji and his 4 Manasaputras, mind-born sons, Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanatana, Sanat Kumara, these 4 sons of Brahma. And the 4 sons of Brahma, they, in keeping with the nature of chapter 8, they asked a question. And this is not where we are in the text. We actually saw this verse, I think, a couple of weeks ago. This is a question asked by the 4 Manasaputras, the question asked of Sri Krishna in the form of a swan. And they asked, they noted that the Guneshu Avishate, I'm trying to read my monitor here. Guneshu Avishate Chetaha. The mind is attached to gunas. Gunaha cha Atmani cha Prabho. And the gunas are in consciousness. So we have this very intimate relationship between, Chetasi in the mind, not in consciousness, in the mind. So we have this very intimate relationship between gunas and mind, leading them to ask then, Katam, how anyonya santyagaha? How can they be all renounced? Santyagaha. How can we get rid of them? Now, remember, gunas are the ancient world view of how the world exists. In the ancient world view, material things, including your body, are made of gunas. And in that same ancient world view, non-physical things, like your mind, are also made of gunas. So they're asking how to get rid of these gunas, the gunas which are fundamental to the human condition. Can you see the problem? That's exactly the problem. It's an undeniable fact that the human condition of the body and mind is a huge problem. The body is always suffering in one way or the other. The mind also is always suffering in one way or the other. So there is a very important purpose of this question, how to get rid of these gunas, which are causing all the suffering. But perhaps we could say that the question is somehow misdirected. And we'll see how now Sri Krishna addresses that problem. We now pick up the thread. We're now 10 verses later, and this is where Sri Krishna has already been teaching them. We saw the teaching begin in the last week's class. We won't review that. We'll continue now with these teachings. This is Sri Krishna then responding to their question. Guneshva vishate cheto, gunashvaya vishate cheto, gunash chetasi cha prajaha, gunash chetasi cha prajaha, jivasya deha ubhayam, jivasya deha ubhayam, gunash cheto maratmanaha, gunash cheta atmanaha. So here Sri Krishna actually paraphrases what the Manasaputra, what those 4 boys said about the nature of the problem. And end of the second line, he addresses them. Prajaha, and we'll translate that, oh dear boys, so to speak, oh dear ones. Guneshu avishate chetaha. Chetas, one of the many words for mind. The mind avishate literally enters, but in this sense gets attached to gunaha. Gunaha means the qualities of everything you experience. So everything you experience in the world is trigunatmaka, consists of these same 3 gunas. Everything that exists has the 3 gunas. All of your experiences are based on these 3 gunas. So the mind is attached to these 3 gunas. Mind is attached to experience. And in particular, mind is attached to pursuing pleasant experiences. Mind is attached to avoiding unpleasant experiences, returning to our frequent topic of raga and dvesha. This is the nature of the mind. The second part of this, of course, is gunaha chetasi. Mind is attached to gunas. Gunas are attached to mind. Gunas are born from the mind. Experiences take place in your mind. And the point that this first half of the verse makes, and this is almost identical to what the original question was, the point of it is that these 2, the mind and gunas, and the commentator uses the word gratitam. They are tied together, indivisibly. When I say tied, like knotted together. Some knots you can undo, but some knots you can't undo. If you have sewing thread, which is knotted tightly, I mean, for those of you, so can anyone really undo that in sewing thread? Right? You can't undo that knot. You cut it away. So there are knots that can be undone. This is a knot that can't be undone. And in other words, we could say that as long as you have a body, physical body, you are subject to the function of the 3 gunas in your physical body. As long as you have a mind, you are subject to the problems of the mind, which are also born of the 3 gunas. What is the solution? Get rid of it. If your body is a problem, get rid of it. You remember the doctor, the patient is an old joke, really old. A patient comes to the doctor, I have a headache, I've taken everything for it. What can I do to get rid of the headache? The doctor says it's very serious. We'll have to amputate. So you get the point, and that is there's no good solution for the problems of the body and mind. Yet, we all seek a solution. We seek a solution to the problem of suffering. And this would be a good place to differentiate between pain and suffering. Pain is a sensation. Suffering is your response to the sensation. Some sensations are nice. Oh, that's nice. Some sensations are not so nice, like pain. Imagine you could have pain with no negative response. Just imagine. It's a sensation, just like any other sensation. Hey, there it is again. There's the head is throbbing. It's throbbing quite nicely today. Honestly, that's possible. I guarantee you that's possible. It's possible when and if you have detached yourself, you've detached your sense of identity away from the body and mind, and when you have become fully identified as your true nature, Atma, consciousness, unchanging consciousness. When that shift of identification is complete, you can truly say, the head is pounding really nicely today. You won't even say, my head. Consciousness doesn't have a head. Consciousness doesn't have a body. Sensations are present in consciousness. The throbbing is present in consciousness. But as when you are so firmly identified as being unchanging consciousness, you'll know that the throbbing doesn't affect you at all. We've discussed this, so we won't go further here. So, Sri Krishna now continues in first half sets up the problem. The mind and the gunas are inextricably connected, and you're never going to undo that knot. So how to come out of the suffering caused by the mind and its gunas? And Sri Krishna hints at the answer in the second half. He says, jivasya, for the person whose mind and gunas are so knotted together, for such a person, that person has a deha, a physical body, also has ubhayam, both of those two, gunas and chetas, mind. Gunaha, cheto. He also has gunas and mind. So the jiva, a person, the person sitting in your chair has a body, also has a mind and these gunas. But here's where Sri Krishna hints at the answer. He says, jivasya, for that person, madatmanaha, the atma, the true self of that person is, mat is a pronoun form of me. I am the self of that person. And self here, and we'll see it's described more as we continue, he's referring to the consciousness, which is your essential nature. We use simple language sometimes, like the divinity that dwells within you, which is a helpful expression. But ultimately, the divinity that dwells within you is unchanging consciousness, unborn, uncreated, and utterly unaffected by whatever happens to your body and mind. Sri Krishna says, madatmanaha, the person who has a body, mind, and these gunas, the self of that person is me, pure consciousness, which is utterly untouched by the problems of the body and mind. And that's what Sri Krishna is going to now explain in the coming verses. He says, oh, I skipped one. This one. Yeah, okay, thank you. Gune, let me get the pitch up a little bit. Guneshu chavishatchittam, Guneshu chavishatchittam, Abhikshnam gunasevaya, Abhikshnam gunasevaya, Gunascha chitta prabhava, Gunascha chitta prabhava, Madrupa hubhayam tyajet, Madrupa hubhayam tyajet. So he's going back to explaining the problem even in more detail. He says that guneshu cha abhivishat chittam. The chittam, mind, is avishat. It has entered into, it is attached. Guneshu, to the gunas. He's already said that, so what is the new thing being taught in this verse? Abhikshnam, constantly. And constantly means constantly. Whenever you're awake, you are subject to raga and dvesha. Is that not true? Whenever you're awake, you feel that compulsion to seek out that which you find is desirable. You feel the compulsion to avoid that which you think is undesirable. Those compulsions are with you whenever you're awake. And why are those compulsions so tenacious? Because guna sevaya. Because your mind has been involved with them for a long time. Your mind, it's habitual. Your mind, you already know how habitual our minds are. Consider this. Arguably from before your birth, but we'll start with birth. We don't know much about what happens to babies before they're born, except we know that they're alive and they have some kind of life there in mother's womb. Let's start after the baby is born. Instantly, the baby wants something, right? The baby wants comfort. If that baby is say, left cold, that baby will start crying immediately. The baby wants comfort. The baby already has raga and dvesha, wants warm and comfort and wants to avoid coldness. Already newborn, the baby has raga dvesha, and the baby has lived with that raga and dvesha. The baby is the one who's grown up to the person sitting in your chair right now. How many years has that baby lived with his raga and dvesha? For a long time. That's where habitual mental behavior comes from. So our minds are so deeply conditioned by raga dvesha to seek the desirable, to avoid the undesirable. So that is problem one, the mind being attached to gunas. Gunas would include being, for the baby, being warm and avoiding cold. This is, in ancient worldview, these are gunas, warmth, coolness, everything in the physical world and non-physical world. It's all gunas. So mind is attached to gunas. And then the second half of the problem, he restates in the third line, gunaha cha chitta prabhavaha. Excuse me. He says, cha and gunaha, those gunas, are chitta prabhava. They are born of the mind, which means, I think the point he wants to make here is if you're thinking that the gunas that your mind is attached to, if they're all outside, then close your eyes. Does that solve the problem? Your mind itself creates new problems. So the gunas are outside as objects that you find desirable, as objects that you find undesirable. Those gunas are also inside, born of your own mind, born of, for example, some emotions are pleasant, some emotions are unpleasant. So this is a restatement of the problem. What is added here is the habitual and continual nature of this problem. You've had this problem since birth, and it's with you every moment of the waking day, every moment you're awake. How can we unknot these two? How would you answer that question? I'll make a bad pun. You cannot unknot. How's that? You cannot unknot. These cannot be unknotted. This is the human condition. As long as you're alive, this is what you have to deal with. So then, where is the solution? Well, Sri Krishna hinted at it in the prior verse when he said, Jivasya maratmanaha. All this occurs for the jiva, the individual person, whose atma, whose true self, is me. And he says almost the same thing at the end of this verse. He says, madrupaha ubhayam tyajet. It says ubhayam, both of those being chetas, mind, and gunas, which are knotted together. Sri Krishna says, ubhayam tyajet, get rid of them both. Well, that seems to contradict what I just said. I said you can't unknot them, you can't get rid of them, but the hint here, madrupaha, one whose rupa, whose essence is mat, me. He's referring to the conscious self of the person. Conscious self of the person sitting in your chair. Let's make sure this is not abstract or theoretical in any way. You have a body, you have a mind, and it's all the product of these three gunas. But you, the conscious observer of whatever is happening in your mind right now. That, for me, that expression is so important. Who are you in an essential manner, in a fundamental way? You are the one having this experience. Your body doesn't have an experience. You experience the body, right? You are the one who experiences what happens to the body. You are the one who experiences what happens in your mind. You are the conscious observer of all these experiences. We use the word sakshi, and Sri Krishna himself will use that word in the next verse. Sakshi, a awareful witness. And the key here is the awareful witness is not someone who's involved in the activity, is not someone who gets affected. I gave them the other day the example of being the witness of a crime. If you are the witness of the crime doesn't affect you. You're not the one being robbed. You're not the one being murdered. You're watching from a distance. You are fundamentally unaffected. On the other hand, if you are the accomplice in the crime, you're most definitely involved. Or if you're the victim of the crime, you're involved, you're affected. But our concept, our understanding of witness is an uninvolved observer, an unaffected observer. And this leads to one of the most important teachings of Advaita Vedanta, and that is the consciousness by which you know what's happening right now. That consciousness is utterly unaffected by the problems of your body and mind. Now, this is not a statement to be taken as a matter of belief, because believing it won't help you. If you feel affected, you feel affected, and there's the problem. The problem is that you don't identify yourself as being that conscious observer, awareful observer, detached observer. You identify yourself with your body and mind, and as long as you identify yourself with your body and mind, you will feel affected. You won't really be affected, you'll certainly feel affected. That's the way I just need to underline this little bit right now. We are all very skillful at one thing in particular. We may have individual skills, but there's one skill we all share in tremendous measure, and that is the skill in making mistakes. We're good at it, and we've had a lot of practice, and we're able to make a lot more mistakes as long as we're around. One of the mistakes we make has a consequence of causing suffering for ourselves. And that mistake is when we fail to discern between me and everything else. I am a conscious observer. Anything observed by me is separate from me. That which is separate from me doesn't affect me. These are some of the most fundamental and powerful teachings of Advaita Vedanta. And as I said, this doesn't work as a matter of belief. To believe this or to even to conceptually understand it doesn't help you at all. What helps you is when you shift your identification. As I just said, normally we're identified. This is me. It's possible to shift your identification to such an extent that this isn't me. This is a body. This is a mind. I'm very much aware of this body and mind. Thank goodness I'm not this body and mind. This body looks funny. This mind has all kinds of problems. Thank goodness it's not me. I am the conscious observer. I am detached from the body and mind. Notice when we say I am detached, it doesn't mean body and mind disappear in any sense. They're still present in your experience. It's a shift of identification. We use this word atma-jnana, self-knowledge, and it's a wonderful expression, but it leads to being a little overly conceptual about this self-knowledge. There's nothing conceptual about answering the question, who are you? Let's just do this for a moment and we'll come back to our text here. If I say, who are you? You need pages and pages and pages, right? You're going to write out your whole life's autobiography of your entire life. To really define who you are would take pages, right? Everything you've done, everything you've been, all of the situations you've been through, all of that defines who you are. But suppose you had only one blank to fill in. I asked you, who are you? And among all those things in your autobiography, you could only choose one word. If you can choose that one word, I am Atma, Satchidananda, consciousness, pure consciousness, unaffected. What I'm trying to describe is a shift of identification. And the reason for that is nothing abstract about identification. You see yourself as an embodied being. That's your self-concept. And that's where suffering arises. When you shift your identification from body, mind, etc., when you shift it to pure consciousness. I am the conscious observer of whatever is happening in this body and mind. When that becomes your baseline, so to speak, I don't know if that makes sense, when that becomes your fixed idea of who you are, then you gain so much freedom. And that's exactly what Sri Krishna is going to show here in the next two verses, how one shifts identification in the next verse, and what is the benefit of shifting your identification in that way in the verse following that. So let's continue. Jagrat swapna sushuptam cha, Jagrat swapna sushuptam cha, Gunato buddhi vrittayaha, Gunato buddhi vrittayaha, Tasam vilakshano jivaha, Tasam vilakshano jivaha, Sakshittvena vinishchitaha, Sakshittvena vinishchitaha. Jagrat, waking state. Swapnaha, in fact, he gets very philosophical here. Swapnaha, the dream state. Sushuptam cha, the state of dreamless sleep. These three states are buddhi vrittayaha, are conditions of your mind. Now, he's being very philosophical. Let's take a moment to consider what is the point he's making here with this fancy philosophical language. Everything you experience in life is experienced either when you're awake, or when you're dreaming, or when you're in deep sleep. These are your three states of experience. There's nothing beyond that, right? As a human being, all of your experiences will fall into one of these three categories. It'll be an experience while you're awake, it'll be an experience while you're sleeping, or it'll be an experience taking place in deep sleep. These are states of experience. By the way, you've heard the term states of consciousness, which is a huge misinterpretation of this topic. Because Sri Krishna says very clearly, these are buddhi vrittayahas, these are conditions of your mind, these are not conditions of Atma, consciousness. This is not our topic for right now. In fact, let me just say it and move on. Consciousness has no states. Anyone who says consciousness has states doesn't understand what consciousness is. Because what word have I used so many times in our texts and in our Vedanta class, our Sunday Vedanta class? Again and again and again, we hear Shankara saying consciousness is unchanging. That idea of being the sakshi, the distant, detached observer, suggests that consciousness is unchanging. Fundamentally, consciousness is a fundamental reality. Fundamental realities don't change. The law of cause and effect doesn't change. Law of gravity, I can't call it a law of gravity. The force of gravity, these are fundamental realities. They don't change. Consciousness is a fundamental reality. It doesn't change. That which doesn't change has states. Why do so many people misunderstand that? This is one of the situations where the misunderstandings seem to outnumber the correct understandings. Unchanging consciousness has no states. I don't want to talk about that. That's not our topic right now. If you'd like to understand it better, maybe the best place is there's a video, my video on Turiya. So Turiya, in fact, Sri Krishna himself is going to use that. The fourth state is not a fourth state of consciousness. Okay, so anyway, go watch that video, my video on Turiya, and you'll get a very thorough explanation, because I don't want to get sidetracked right now. But Sri Krishna says enough here. He says that these three conditions, waking, dream, and deep sleep, in which 100% of your experiences are bracketed by waking, dream, and deep sleep, all of those experiences take place due to these changing conditions of the mind. And these changing conditions of the mind, he says, are gunataha, due to gunas. And due to gunas, here the commentator adds some detail. He says that in a waking state, he says primarily sattvika, a lot of more sattva than rajas and tamas in the waking state. More rajas in the dream state, and more tamas, obviously, in the state of deep sleep. So that's a connection the commentator makes. Sri Krishna here simply says, gunataha, these are natural states of your mind, these three. And now here it comes. He says, tasam vilakshanaha jivaha. Jiva, the conscious being, the essence of who you are as Satchidananda Atma, that conscious being is vilakshanaha, separate, independent tasam from those three states of mind, which is to say that your true nature is the consciousness who observes the mind going through these three conditions. When you wake up in the morning, it's like now you're watching the mind being awake. When you lay down and dream, now you're watching the mind dream. And the words I'm using now are not facetious. This is the reality of what you experience. Right now, you are aware of your mind in the waking state. Tonight, when you're dreaming, you are aware of your mind in the dream state. And in deep sleep, you are aware of your mind in the state of deep sleep. In the state of deep sleep, your mind doesn't do anything. In the state of deep sleep, your mind is, to use the commentator's language, your mind is full of tamas, pure tamas. An experience of pure tamas is deep sleep. Notice it's still an experience, but it's an experience of pure tamas. You've heard me give the example. If your eyes are open, wide open, in a pitch black room, do you see? Do you have the power of sight in that pitch black room? You don't lose your power of sight. You see. There's nothing to be seen. Or we could even say you see darkness. It's one way of understanding it. What do you see? You see darkness. If you have something black and you hold it up in front of your face, what do you see? Black. What do you see in that dark room? Black. What do you see in deep sleep? Blackness, tamas, so to speak. You are conscious, there's nothing to be conscious of. So that jivaha, that conscious being, is vilakshanaha, independent of the three states of experience. That jiva is nishchitaha, is understood as being sakshittvena, understood as being the sakshi, understood as being the conscious observer. This is what we've been leading up to. So, in essence, you are an unchanging conscious observer of the changing conditions of your mind, of the changing conditions of your body, changing conditions of the world around you. But as a sakshi, you are an unchanging observer, uninvolved observer, unaffected observer. We like the word detached, a detached observer, asangaha. This is what Sri Krishna is teaching here, and this is the solution to the insolvable problem. And we'll see that actually in the next verse. So remember we said that this not is a kind of knot that you cannot remove. So he's going to give a solution to this knotty problem. Sorry, I shouldn't do that. All right. Yarhi samsriti bandhoyam, yarhi samsriti bandhoyam, atmano gunavrittidaha, atmano gunavrittidaha, maiturye stito jahyat, maiturye stito jahyat, tyagastad guna chetasam. Chagastadguna chetasam. Yarhi, as long as ayam samspriti bandhaha. As long as ayam, this samsriti bandha, bondage, Samsriti is a synonym for samsara, has the same verbal root. Samsara equals samsriti, samsara. Samsara means worldly life, and in particular, a life of suffering. That's the intention here. So bandha, the bondage to samsriti, to the struggle and suffering of worldly life, this problem is guna vrittidaha. This problem is that da means given by, born of. It is due to guna vritti, the function of the gunas. Suffering in life is due to the function of the gunas. Function of the gunas means the function of your body, the function of your mind. Interesting just to reflect. Suppose the function of your body and mind were to stop, just like that. Would you suffer after it's over, after that moment? What I'm describing, of course, is like death or coma. So whatever is the function of your body and mind just stops. After it all stops, is there any suffering? There may or may not have been suffering the moment before. Afterwards, there's no experience of any particular thing at all. So suffering comes to an end. This is just a mental experiment to show how suffering is born of the nature of the function of your body and mind. But now, what is this? What is the solution? There we go again. We're going to have to amputate. The problem is the body and mind. We have to, chop it all away. That's not a very good solution. So fortunately, Sri Krishna here gives us a wonderful option. He observes that this problem of samsriti bandha, the bondage to a life of suffering, he says, atmanaha, it's for oneself. It is centered on I. It is my problem, my suffering, my body, my mind. Whatever is mine, I not only own the thing, I own the problems associated with the thing, right? If you own a car, you own the problems of the car. If the car gets a dent or a crash or whatever, those problems now become your problems. If you own a home, as many of you do, the problems of the home are your problem. You have to deal with it. The repairs and whatever maintenance, whatever has to be done. And look at this. This is the logic. This is a logic that leads you to sannyasa. What is the logic? The more you have, see where this is going? The more you have, the more problems you have. Therefore, the less you have, wow, there's this, give it all away. You'll have less problems, which in a manner is true. You can't deny the logic, but it's just not very practical. If you have a family to take care of, you can't exactly give away your home. If you have to get to work on Monday, you can't get rid of your car. So there's some practical issues. But in fact, this is why people take to a life of sannyasa, a life of simplicity, I should say. Doesn't have to be sannyasa. Does have to be simplicity. You can't argue this logic. The more complex your life is, the more headaches you have. That's how it works. The simpler your life is, the fewer headaches you'll have. That's just the way it works. So this is an argument not for sannyasa. It is an argument for simplicity. Okay, enough said. So here the point. Let's know what is the point. Atmanaha. This problem belongs to me. If it is my body, my mind, which is knotted with these gunas, if this is my problem, I've had it. There's no solution because this knot will never be undone unless you amputate, cut it off. So then what is the solution? And the solution he gives in the third line. He says, Stitaha, this is the middle of the third line, Stitaha, for one who is established, Mayi, in me, Turye, the fourth. Now that may sound kind of funny. Me, the fourth. He's talking about the three from the prior verses. The three states of mind, not three states of consciousness. Don't go there. And there is no fourth state of consciousness. If consciousness is unchanging, how can there be a fourth state of unchanging consciousness? Doesn't make any sense at all. So, fourth condition, we could say fourth condition of mind, it can refer to samadhi, and that would be a fair statement to make. So in the condition of samadhi, you could say that your mind is now absorbed into the reality of who you are, or to use Sri Krishna's language, your mind is absorbed into Sri Krishna in samadhi. That's the fourth. Your mind is not in a waking state. Your mind is not in a dream state. Your mind is not in deep sleep. Your mind is absorbed in Sri Krishna, the fourth. Your mind is in a condition we call samadhi. Notice it's the mind that's in the condition of samadhi. What happens to consciousness? Waking state, consciousness. Dream state, same consciousness. Deep sleep state, same consciousness. Samadhi, same consciousness. Unchanging consciousness. Okay, enough said. So it says that when you are stitaha, established, and here, when he says established, go back to what we said before about shifting identification. Right now, your identification is well established. This is me. Suppose you shift that identification in such a way as this is not me. I am that unchanging consciousness, which is metaphorically Sri Krishna's presence within me. That is me. One who has shifted identification in this way, or literally, one who is established in me, in Sri Krishna, who's the fourth, the one who is attained in samadhi, what should that person do? That person, jahyat, should reject. Should reject what? Guna vrittidaha bandhaha. Interesting. The grammar here is actually very fussy. What I'm saying fussy is you don't reject the mind and the gunas. To reject the mind and the gunas is the amputation option, which is not a very good option. So, jahyat, what does that word connect to? Jahyat. Actually, it doesn't connect to anything, sorry. I'm just looking at the grammar here to see if what hints that gives. So the one who is established in me should renounce. It doesn't say what you should renounce. I'm just giving you some grammatical analysis here. The connection, though, is you're going to renounce your body? Jahyat. Jahyat literally means to throw something away. You're going to throw away your body? I don't think so. Throw away your mind and the gunas it's knotted with? That's not an option. So what are you throwing away? Well, earlier in this verse, we talked about bandha, bondage. The bondage to samsriti, samsara, worldly life, that can, in fact, be renounced. You can come out of that bondage. How? And now he explains in this last line. What is that renunciation? He goes back to this word tyagaha, the same word used by those 4 boys. How do we do the tyaga of this mind being so knotted with these gunas? How do we get rid of it? How do we renounce it? Tyaga also means to get rid of. And he says, tyagaha tadguna chetasam. That is the renunciation of chetas and guna. So you have gunas, wrong order. You have the mind knotted with the gunas. How to renounce them without the extreme solution of amputation? The solution is to be mayi stitaha, to be established in me. Now, what does that mean in terms of our own experience? Right now, you're probably identified with body and mind. If to the extent you're identified with your body and mind, to that extent you're not identified with your inner divinity. So we've been talking about shifting that identification, which takes time. It's not like one day you say, okay, I get it. It doesn't work like that at all. It takes time. Over a period of time, you indeed can shift your identification so that this body is like these clothes. It's something you wear. It's something you are inside looking out, so to speak. Becomes your relationship with your body. And similarly for your mind, you become the sakshi, the observer of these conditions of the mind. You go on watching. Like when you watch TV shows, you watch one show, then another show, then another show. Actually, you watch shows. Mostly what you watch is commercials. I don't know how people can watch TV. It doesn't work for me. Anyway, so you watch one show, that's like waking state. You watch the second show, dream state. Then there's commercial means you go to the kitchen. And that's the equivalent of the deep sleep state. So the idea is you're sitting on your comfortable couch watching all these shows, but look at this identification. You are the one sitting on your couch. You are the awareful observer of whatever is happening on that TV screen. And the fact is, whatever happens on that TV screen doesn't affect you at all. This is Advaita Vedanta. And this is how Advaita Vedanta frees you from suffering. Just last comment here. We're done. Last comment here. Some people wrongly think of Advaita Vedanta as some kind of philosophy. This is not a philosophy. These are teachings meant to free you from suffering. And that freedom from suffering happens gradually by shifting your identification from what you Interesting. From what you wear. Just some people, often women, are very identified with what they wear. I don't mean to be critical, I'm just observing, okay? And to be honest, most women are not so much teenagers and something else. So there's a fascination with appearance. For teenage girls, there's a fascination with appearance. So they're highly identified with what they wear. You all know the problems that causes. That extreme identification a teenage girl has with her appearance. And then when she compares her ordinary appearance to the appearance of all these models she sees in the magazines and TV commercials, and she says, oh, I don't look like that, I have this problem, that problem, my face looks like this, my body looks... This is a problem that causes really, teenage girls struggle with this a lot. It causes a tremendous amount of suffering. I'd like to suggest everyone is a little bit like those teenage girls in that we identify with what we wear. Body, and in some abstract sense, we wear our personalities, our minds, our intellects. So for the teenage girl, that identification makes her suffer more and more. The less identification she has, the less she suffers. Same thing for everyone. The more you identify with body, mind, and all these externals, that identification leads to suffering. The solution, Sri Krishna says in 2 words, Mayi stitaha. Be established in me, meaning shift your identification to the true self, Satchidananda Atma. Okay, this is one last point. So, what happened to that knot? The knot that couldn't be unknotted. What happened to that knot? It's still knotted. You don't get rid of the knot. When you're enlightened, that knot remains. What changes is you don't care about it anymore because you're not identified with it. The knot belongs to the mind and body. The knot does not belong to me. So this is the solution. The solution is not to unknot the knot. The solution is to know that the knot is not mine. Okay. Closing announcements. Tomorrow we have our Upadesha Sahasri class, brilliant teachings of Sri Shankara. Join us at 10 o'clock. Immediately after the class at 11 o'clock is satsang. Please come with your questions. We'll conclude with our prayers. Om Gananahan Tva Ganapatigam Avamahe Kaving Gavidam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatahana Shranvan Uttabasira Saranam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururhatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramhanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor ma amritangamaya. Om Shanti 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 Om Tat Sat.